Hello, everyone. It's Wednesday, the 11th of March, and it's time for another edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. I'm Brian Walton. This is my partner, Kyle Reis. Welcome, Kyle.
Happy day, Brian. Happy day. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's another beautiful low 80s sunny day here in Jupiter. The Major League team only has about 10 days left until camp ends, and they head up north for that exhibition in Springfield on the 23rd. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the battles. We'll talk about some of the roster cuts that have been made and other things. But I got to get through the housekeeping at the beginning. We come to you each week at thecardinalnation.com in video form. We're also on YouTube. We're on all the basic streaming platforms. So you should be able to find us in audio or video form as you so choose. So one of the things that I think is one of the highlights of the spring is the Spring Breakout Game, which is something that was just created a couple years ago, and it pits one group of prospects from one organization against another. Now, next year, they're going to turn this into a tournament, which is even cooler. Um,
Yeah.
and regardless of level, the teams pick their top prospects, and then they whittle down the rosters to 27, and they play this game. In this case, the game will be, I guess, is it Thursday the 19th, something like that?
That sounds right.
Week after next. Yeah, I'll be there to report on what's going on there. So we don't know what the final roster would going to be, but there weren't a lot of surprises, were there, in your opinion, on the guys that they identified as their first 40?
No, Brian, my brain is a type of brain that can only comprehend one or two names at a time. So when I see a list of that many names, yeah, what it's like 40 names, right?
Yeah. And one of the things I talked about, go to the Cardinal Nation. There's a free article about it. Basically, 32 members of our top 50 are among the 40. And of course, the names you'd expect: Weather Holt and Doyle and Rainier Rodriguez. Really, the only guys that are in our top 20 are guys that Kyle didn't want in our top 20 anyway, because they've already reached the major leagues. I'm talking about Jimmy Crooks and Nathan Church. And then Jerpy and Roby, who, of course, are both injured for an extended period, are also not on the 40-man roster. But other than that, it's all. And then Brandon Clark and Eshawn Henderson are both on the roster for some reason, but we know they're not going to be able to play. So, there's still some give and take to go. But that game that'll be on Thursday the 19th. It's at 3:30 p.m. Central Time, so it's a little bit of an odd time, but it'll be televised and, of course, streamed. So make sure that you either record it or go back and take a look at it if you have to be at work during the game.
Yeah, Brian, the only name really that sticks out to me on this list, and I did pull it back up because it's so easy to forget one or two people, but the only name that's kind of missing or that stands out or seems unlike the others, and maybe we need to start paying a little bit more attention to is Jovi Galvez. Or Yovi Galvez. I haven't really seen much on him. I really don't know much about Mr. Galvez. And I guess hopefully we'll get a chance to see him. Although, there's 25 pitchers on the roster or whatever it is. So there's a good chance that we won't. But it'd be fascinating to see what happens there. That would be the one name. Other than that, like you said, Brian, these are all the top prospects that we've talked about and been talking about.
All right, but it's like you said, it's exciting to see some of the young guys coming over. I mean, we've talked about a little bit about the two shortstops, Miguel Hernandez and Sebastian dos Santos. And Hernandez has been amazing in the games that I've seen. Just today, Tuesday, against the Mets. He wasn't even on the roster for the game. This was a Peoria game. But they brought him over. He was taking batting practice on the field nearby. And they brought him over, and he came in and smoked an RBI double to deep center, stole third base, and came home on a sacrifice fly for what was at the time the lead run. Miguel Hernandez, a guy who, we've got at 40, 42 in our prospect list, but is definitely going to make some waves in the U.S. this year, I think.
Yeah, I definitely would have liked to have seen both of them get a chance. Again, I'm excited to see a full season of Yairo Padilla and Miguel and Sebastian. Like, I'm really excited about seeing a full season of all three of those guys to kind of compare them. Hopefully,
And
there's some position issues because they all play the same position as they come stateside, and there's no guarantee that Dos Santos and Hernandez will end up being stateside, but I'm anxious to see the. I can't wait to compare the three. So when I see Yairo on the list, I want to see Miguel and I want to see Sebastian on it because I want to start comparing the three.
yeah, they'll definitely be stateside. The question is whether they're, make Palm Beach, and that's probably unlikely. They'll probably be in
Yeah,
the Florida Complex League. But what the Cardinals did differently this year, and I'm glad you kind of touched on this, Kyle, because I want to talk about it. Normally, what the Cardinals did in the past was they sort of had three waves of minor leaguers, forgetting the guys that are cut from Major League camp. The first wave that came into early camp, or what they used to call step camp, now they call depth camp. Then the second group for regular minor league spring training. And then the third group came in for extended spring training. And extended spring training basically is to fill the gap between the end of spring training and when the Florida Complex League starts. The rookie level league starts. This year, they brought everybody into minor league camp. They brought like 14 guys over from last year's Dominican Summer League team. So there aren't any more guys to add. And as St. Louis keeps cutting guys, now there's almost like 150 players in minor league camp. So they're going to have more than enough to stock Memphis, Springfield, Palm Beach, and Peoria, and have guys left over to compete in extended spring training. But to your point, I want to come back to, and that's Yairo Padilla. Yairo Padilla is physically very impressive. Tall, slender, but very good on his feet. Of course, you have to be a shortstop, but very dynamic. Now, he made a couple of errors. He got in a big league game the other day, made a couple throwing errors, but let's face it, you're talking about a teenager, under the spotlight of a major league game, you might get a little bit nervous. But one of the coaches that talked to me about that said, hey, it's better he kind of gets that taken care of now, and hopefully next time it won't happen again.
Yairo Padilla is my favorite prospect, I think, to talk about because I find him so fascinating. I feel like the industry as a whole, again, our third-party outlet, our third-party friends in particular, tried so hard to get ahead of the Yairo Padilla thing that maybe some of the finer refinements in prospectum got lost as he found his way on a lot of other top 10 lists and top 12 lists and top 15 lists within the Cardinals organization prospect-wise. And what I see and what I watch is I see why people would say, oh, this young man is a top 10 prospect in the Cardinals organization, but it misses some of the finer refinements that even teenagers have at that level that he does not necessarily possess. It's the kind of stuff that a development staff would dream on and get lost in their dreams and maybe have trouble evaluating honestly and upfront. What I've seen in the video that I've had sent to me and also in that game is a gentleman, a young man who still lacks refinement. And again, I'm not trying to like say that what we did was right, and you should take all of the prospect. Brian, you say it all the time. I say it all the time. Take all of the prospect list and kind of aggregate them. Listen to what people are saying. Gather that information, collect it. But I think that where we have Yairo is a little bit more accurate to where he should be viewed within the organization because he's not as refined. There is power questions, and also even as athletic and impressive as he is athletically and physically at short, there's concerns there. I'll be honest, I'm not one to believe that he's going to stick at short. I think he might be best suited for third, where his rushed lower half can I don't know overcompensate for some of his lack of strength in his upper half.
And
So
what Kyle's referring to by the rankings, by the way, we have him ranked
yeah,
29, right around 30. Major League MLB Pipeline, for example, has him ranked 16th. And this is totally based on projection because he just hasn't yet, matured and delivered the kind of results one would expect from him.
yeah, and at the same time, because of his size, a lot of people do. It's so much easier to project on him, right? 6'4", a body, a frame that you can project on. Whereas maybe someone like Sebastian Dos Santos doesn't have that same frame. Miguel Hernandez doesn't have that same frame. So again, not to get lost because we've got a lot to talk about in the Yairo Padilla of it. There will all year long, Yairo Padilla will be a prospect that I will go on rants on every once in a while on Wednesdays with Walton and Reis, and it's because I'm so fascinated by his development compared to and compounded by his early hype, which has kind of been unmatched other than Rainiel Rodriguez in the organization. And, one's deserved and one might not be.
And Rainiel Rodriguez has, surpassed that, obviously. I mean, he's literally on pretty much everybody's national top 100 prospect list right now. And I will tell you, the results, it's still early, and they've barely just started practice games. But one of the things that impressed me today, I was out in the backfields for a 1:00 game, and I was out there probably 12:20, and there wasn't much going on. The first guy out there was Rainiel Rodriguez. He had his gear on. He was taking practice swings. He was ready to play 30 minutes before the game ever started. And, that's something you want to see in a guy that's just, he wants to play the game.
I love it, Brian. You also, and again, I know we want to talk about some roster cuts and everything. I can't wait to get to talk to the minor league backfield games of it all. But you've been supplying us with incredible information, including a monster home run that Rainiel hit that we talked about last week a little bit, and not only him, but there's been such good coverage and such good information coming out of the backfields, especially with some hitters who seem to be hitting really well. But we'll get to that in due time.
One of the things I'm trying to do is cover one game and cover it from out to out. and document it that way. Because in the past, I would try to cover multiple games and I would get fragmented and I would miss things. And I found the reports weren't as satisfying because they weren't complete. What you'll be seeing if you subscribe to the Cardinal Nation, which you should, you'll see whatever game I picked. Today was easy because there was only one game or Tuesday. Obviously, we're recording this on Tuesday, folks. This is not a secret. The game today in Jupiter was Peoria, but really the players were kind of Palm Beach, and then the other two upper level teams called Memphis and Springfield, but won't be those teams when start the regular season. Those teams played in Port St. Lucie. I don't have the results for those games yet, but I will have them tonight. So when I post my article in the morning for subscribers, you can read about what happened in those two games as well.
Well, I know I'm looking forward to it, Brian. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you. So Kyle alluded to roster cuts. Another thing the Cardinals are doing differently this year is they're making cuts on a more, I wouldn't say daily basis, but since Saturday, they made, let me see, they made 6 cuts on Saturday, 5 cuts on Monday, and another 3 on Tuesday. So they're starting this process of every few days shedding players from the team in camp. With the goal of course, getting to 26 to start the season. They're still at 43, so there's still 17 more cuts to go, about in the next 10 days. Now, they may take some extra guys with them to the Springfield exhibition, but again, with the Memphis team going there as well, those are guys that, could just end up on the Memphis roster anyway. So, we'll see about that. But the first round of cuts included 3 top 10 prospects in the system. I'm talking about Leonardo Bernal, Jimmy Crooks, and Tink Hence. And then Brian Torres, who some folks thought might be a dark horse contender for the left field job. Torres has been away at the World Baseball Classic, and you can't impress if you're not there. Cesar Prieto, who really was blocked behind a bunch of other infielders anyway, but is our number 39 ranked prospect. And then Skylar Hales. Those were the 6 that went out. Of those, which one surprised you the most regarding the timing?
Boy, what a great question. I wasn't, the tough thing is I don't feel like I was surprised by any of them, Brian. Especially when you're talking about major league games leading into minor league camp. I think that a lot of the public outcry was about the catchers, right? Specifically Jimmy Crooks, but also Leo Bernal. But I was not, because I view that situation for what it is. And they know Jimmy Crooks. It's not like they're sending him to Wichita, Kansas. He's going to be right there. They can keep an eye on him. I would say of that group, if forced to choose, that would be it. But I really do think that extra note needs to be paid to Brian Torres, because that left field job to open the season should have been wide open. And for them to send him out a little bit older, a little bit older, I was surprised by that this early in camp.
Yeah. Well, Nelson Velasquez is impressing. He hit a home run for the only Cardinals run on Tuesday up at Port St. Lucie against the Mets. He's hitting a cool 348 right now. Again, it's early, non-roster guy, but he's been looking pretty good. The young guys that have gotten a lot of time out there have all been sent down, and we'll talk about them in a minute. I'm talking about Joshua Baez and Chase Davis specifically. But back to that group, I agree with you on the Crooks thing. The other thing that maybe made it easier to send Crooks out early, and that is Joel Pozo is hitting 333, has an OPS of about 1,000. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's sustainable over the major league season, but Pozo hasn't done anything to play himself off the roster. And it was pretty clear from the start that they assumed that those 3 guys, being Pozo, Ivan Herrera, and Pedro Pages, would be the 3 on the roster.
Yeah, Brian, that sums it up. And I think that he's also, when I say he, I mean Yoel Pozo has also continued to gain the trust of the coaching staff. I think, again, I'm not for him losing 33 pounds. I think he needed to put on 33 pounds, and I'll die on that horse. But getting in shape, taking it a little bit more serious, devoting himself a little bit more to the craft on a professional level, now that he's experienced it professionally, I think has opened the eyes of the staff, which does nothing for the leadership role that he has and the charismatic person that he is. So 26 man on a roster, if he ends up being the 26th man on the roster or the 27th, the first guy off, it makes sense that this catcher race is a 3-horse race between Pozo, Pages, and the achy Ivan Herrera.
Right. And we're still waiting to hear more about his knee and how serious that's going to be. But even if he has to be the DH, his bat will certainly be in the lineup.
Yeah. I would suspect, and we'll see. Like you said, we haven't heard anything since But Mason Wynn missed a couple games, a couple days for that knee of his. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is just that spring precaution, half-ish way through spring training. Let's get him to that week ahead of breaking camp and reevaluate.
Yep, yep. And I'll be watching. A lot of times, what they do is give guys at bats in the minor league games on the backfields where there's a little less pressure earlier in camp. A lot of the guys, Pajes and Burleson and Walker and um, Victor Scott, a bunch of them have been on the backfield. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Oh, by the way, today in the Tuesday games, I should say, Ryan Stanek and Jojo Romero each came and pitched an inning. Of course, they're against Class A level hitters from the Mets. So not surprisingly, Stanek struck out a couple and did walk one guy, and Romero also struck out two in a 1-2-3 inning. So as you would expect, major leaguers did well against minor leaguers. But
Brian, before you get going, I do have you. I have to ask you for an update. Watching some of the major leaguers take extra reps in the backfields. If you've had time, have you had an impression of what kind of work or what kind of results in this controlled environment, specifically Jordan Walker or Nolan Gorman are having? Because they're the hot topic. They're the interesting ones. Victor Scott to a lesser degree, especially because the Cardinals are still saying that the work that Jordan's putting in on the backfields is driving some of their decision making.
Nolan Gorman is a very serious guy. He doesn't waste a lot of time. He doesn't fool around. He's not goofing off. He comes in, he does his work, he leaves. That's pretty much it. And it's hard to read much into it. It's hard to, his at bats look like Nolan Gorman at bats. Jordan Walker, and I probably shouldn't even say this, but I'm not feeling a positive vibe. Jordan Walker, obviously is a physical specimen of a man, but he just doesn't look like he's having any fun.
Yeah.
And man, if this is work, this is hard stuff. I get it. It's difficult, but I just wonder, and I don't have anything to back this up. I haven't talked to Jordan about it. If the weight of the pressure on him is starting to get to him or something, because I see a guy who's doing everything he's supposed to do, but man, there's no smile on his face. There's no excitement. There's no, and I don't mean he's dragging his tail or anything. He's doing his job, but I don't know. It's just, I don't have the good vibes about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's probably a good read because, I remember that joyous 19-year-old that, he used to love playing baseball. And it definitely seems like even when he talks about it, he still is enthusiastic. He still loves it. But the professional job side of it might be taking a toll on him. I don't know. Again, the things that I'm still getting asked about most in like my private DMs from fans is about should we give up on Jordan? Should we give up on Nolan specifically? Of course, the conversations about Victor Scott and Nathan Church and center. But so any little bit of data or not data, but information, I know that people are anxious to hear.
Of course. And the fact is, people have to decide if they're going to give up on if they're playing fantasy sports. And I do.
Yeah.
I do. I play fantasy sports. And I will tell you, at least in the National League drafts I've done so far, I'm doing another one in New York this weekend, but I did not draft either Nolan Gorman or Jordan Walker. However, I did go an extra $1 on Victor Scott, and only because I was impressed by all the work he's been put in bunting. Now, again, he's batting 143 in spring camp, so that might not have been a good move on my part. But I did lean into the wind a little bit on Victor Scott.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because Victor Scott's doing the best of both worlds for someone in his spot, which is he's increased his bat speed by a couple miles per hour, and he's working on bunting. Which, that's just good for him. It's good for him.
So back to the first round of cuts, which were made again on last Saturday. The other name I just wanted to mention is Tink Hence. I've had a lot of questions about Tink Hence.
Yeah.
I had somebody ask me yesterday, well, so what's Tink Hence doing on the backfields? Is he starting or relieving? And I said, well, he just got there. I don't know yet. But the reality is, if you look at how he was used when he was with St. Louis, he threw one inning and then he threw 2/3 of an inning. He's not stretched out to start. He's probably not going to start. He was on the group that was going to pitch up in Port St. Lucie, and he was not the starter. So I don't know if anybody's made a pronouncement yet, but it looks like Tink Hence is probably going to be a reliever, and I think that's probably a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so too. We do know from the data, just that very small inning and two-thirds sample, that he's not getting some of the concerns that we saw last year. His fastball doesn't have the same zip, which doesn't matter early in spring. It's just a side note, very minor side note. But more importantly, one of the mechanical adjustments they made with him is kind of limiting his extension. He doesn't get as extended out. And that dates back to last season, and that's actually kind of hurt the zip on some of his pitches. It's also hurt his command. So that's part of just trying to get his body healthy and his body working in sync, trying to keep him healthy. But it's definitely kind of played negatively across the board for him. So, maybe if he's in a relief role full time, that he can get extended and he can get to more zip and not have to worry about it. So that's just something. Again, I don't want any young pitcher with the type of arm talent that he's exhibited to be relegated to a relief role long term. But I am pro that. So for him, because let's get him in the majors before we Alex Reyes him.
Yeah, I mean, again, not to belabor the point, but Tink was drafted in 2020. This is now 2026, so it's not as if they haven't tried.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian.
All right, so second round of cuts came on Monday, 2 days after the first round of cuts. And again, 4 ranked prospects, 4 in our top 8, 4 in our top 20, basically. Quinn Matthews, who drew a lot of attention when he struck out 7 in 2 2/3 innings the other day, but he also gave up 2 runs at the time. But with Quinn Matthews, we're going to be watching the control. Certainly, we know what he can do. Bryson Motts was sent down. He actually pitched pretty well in big camp. The minor league pitcher of the year, reigning pitcher of the year, allowed 2 runs in 6 1/3. And he'll likely, both those two, Matthews and Motts, will almost certainly be in the Memphis rotation. Cooper Jerpy, who's recovering, as folks know from Tommy John surgery, and Nick Rickey, one of the left-handers, so we'll talk about that. And then the one that surprised a lot of people was Joshua Baez. And, Baez hit a home run in, I think, 3 consecutive games. He looks every bit the part, not unlike Jordan Walker did, when he came to camp that first spring and looked like he was ready to be a star in the majors. And by sending Joshua Baez out this soon, it wasn't an indictment on what he was doing, because obviously he was playing very, very well. But it's the reality that Joshua Baez, they're not going to be tempted to bring Joshua Baez up prematurely. They're going to let him go play AAA for the first time, let him see how he does. They're happy with his progress. But let's face it, the St. Louis Cardinals aren't going to go from a non-playoff team to a playoff team if Joshua Baez is in the lineup daily. And there's a lot of risk in, things not going well. It isn't that long ago that Baez was struggling. So I agree with this decision 100%, but there's a lot of fans who maybe, and some media folks who are kind of trying to fan the flames.
For the people on the podcast, I'm just shaking my head. I'm just shaking my head. Again, I hate to sound like the broken record, but have we learned nothing? Have we learned nothing over the last couple of years? The early part of spring matters less than my blood alcohol content, probably. But no, it does not matter. And it's awesome. Like, there's nothing wrong with getting excited or hyped up. There's nothing wrong with cheering on your favorite team and your favorite young players. Eat that like it's delicious cake. I love delicious cake. You should too. I love prospects
Look at my stomach. I like delicious cake.
Brian and I are shaking our tummies at you.
Yeah.
But let's everybody relax. Let's be happy that these players are getting a chance to compete in Major League camp and have a building block for their minor league season. I'll say one thing that I love, Brian, and you kind of hit on it with Quinn Matthews, is Quinn Matthews had a really good start, and sure there were some issues there, and then a really great appearance, and then goodbye. We'll see you later. Joshua Baez, 3 straight games with 3 straight home runs. You're doing great. We'll see you tomorrow.
Right, leave on a high note.
Exactly. It feels intentional and for the right reasons instead of intentional for the wrong reasons. And I love that. These are the kind of things that I like. Again, I say if I were running an organization, this is what I would do. I think these things here. I like being a little less aggressive. Look, I understand fans. If the Cardinals, and they're wrong for it, I understand it, but they're wrong for it. If the Cardinals were had a chance to really compete for the division, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, but if they had a real chance to compete for the division, and Joshua Baez is headed to Springfield for the exhibition game, and he's hitting 500 with 12 home runs in spring training, then putting up Albert Pujols spring training numbers, and yeah, maybe you reconsider. But that ain't this. And I think we all need to adjust our expectations accordingly and be happy that the organization is sticking to their guns and their plan that they keep telling us in a very communicative way. And to that, I cheers to them, but I'm all out of booze. So I don't know, Brian.
Well put, Kyle. Well put. I glossed by Nick Riquet because lefty relievers aren't that exciting, but the second left-handed pitcher in the pen, I mentioned Romero threw a 1-2-3 inning on the backfields on Tuesday. But with Riquet being sent out, it really looks kind of like Packy Naughton and Justin Brule are competing for that bullpen spot, assuming they carry two lefties. And Brule has allowed 4 earned runs in 3 2/3 innings, but Naughton has 4 scoreless innings, just 2 hits and no walks. Packy Naughton's a guy we've kind of forgotten about because he's basically had 2 injured years in a row, but he hasn't looked bad so far.
How dare you, Brian, say that we forgot about Packy Naughton? How dare you?
I didn't see you put him on your prospect list, Kyle. Maybe he was on page 7. I don't know.
Oh, that is Patrick Joseph of House Naughton to you, sir. But no, so yeah, that's look, I love this. I'm excited about this. I could care less about Justin Brule. I want to see Packy Naughton. I want him to take over the JoJo role. I want him closing games. I want to rally behind Packy Naughton and play good football. That's what I want to do, Brian. And so I look, I don't know what to think here. It did sound like there was some momentum building early in camp for maybe Bryson Mounts to break camp with the big league club as like a long reliever, just as they work through April, since he's on the 40 man. And,
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen.
not going to happen. We know that's not going to happen. And again, that's for the same reasons as Josh Baez and Quinn Matthews. It's the right thing to do. We love it. It's good. But look, neither of these guys are particularly exciting, except for, like you said, Packy is Packy Naughton and Justin Brule is Brule and he spells it weird, and let's get excited about it. Weird lefties is what we're here for.
And just something that you get exclusively from the Cardinal Nation and from Wednesday with Walton Reis, you don't get anywhere else. Packy's from Boston, and
Right.
do a quick Google search on what a Packy is in Boston, and you'll be surprised.
Yeah, very relevant to me.
Yes, but not on our podcast, darn it.
That's right, Brian. That's right. So look,
you've been banned from drinking here.
It's yeah. Whoops.
What he doesn't know won't hurt him.
Yeah, that's right. Oh gosh. But like that's it's funny. This is the one role, and it's just because they're not, or I guess the one position battle, and I guess it's just because they're not like big names. There really isn't a prospect involved per se, but like this is the one position battle that's really intriguing that no one's really talking about because it is Packy Naughton and Justin, Brule. So I'm excited to see how it turns out. And again, I maintain that we're getting to the part of spring training. We're not quite there yet, even with 10 days before they break, where we're just starting to kind of see things come together. And even that's confusing because of the World Baseball Classic going on. So
yep.
It is what it is, Brian. Let's just talk about left-handed relievers for the rest of the day.
No, let's not.
Okay.
Third set of cuts announced on Tuesday, and this surprised me. They had been going 2 days apart. Now they went 2 consecutive days. Max Radjic sent out. Not surprising. He pitched well in spring, but he's a multi-inning reliever type of guy probably now. Bruce Zimmerman, who is a free agent signing, looked okay. Might be in the Memphis rotation as they like the veterans that eat innings. And the other cut was Chase Davis, who got an unusual large amount of time, I thought, especially in left field, and he drew a lot of attention when he hit 2 home runs the other day in one game. But just the opposite of the finishing on a good step. He went 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts on Tuesday and then got sent out. Sorry, Chase.
Look, we've all had a bad day. Yeah.
Sometimes on this podcast, by the way.
Pretty frequently, as a matter of fact. I will say that I think maybe of the 3, the guy worth talking about the most, and I love Chase Davis. I am pulling for him. But I think that Max Radjic made a little bit of an impression in camp because he's gotten to more velocity. They wrote about it in the Post-Dispatch. It was either Mr. Worthy or Mr. Gould or Mr. Guerrero. I don't remember who it was, but they wrote about it in the Post. And it's what some of the stuff I've been hearing. He got up to 97. It's the first time he's ever hit 97. He can get there because they're going to use him in a relief type capacity, whether it be multi-inning or otherwise. And he's also incorporated a sweeper into his repertoire, which plays really well off of his what is a plus curveball. And, he has a couple other pitches that he's toyed with here and there, but to see his arsenal kind of develop and kick up a little bit in a relief role, whether it be, again, short or long relief, I think is a really big positive. And and actually improves his long-term chances of making a major league debut and sticking around for a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, so Kyle mentioned Rajic was a top 20-ish kind of guy, and then now he's down in 40. But like you said, if he can recast himself, improving his offerings, improving his velocity, and becoming a reliever, he can still make a good contribution to the major league club.
Yeah, I feel like poor Chase with Chase, it was like, you know what? He had such a good game yesterday. We're probably going to send him down tomorrow, but we gotta go to Port St. Lucie. And
And let's face it, the veterans don't want to ride the bus. So, Chase, hop on.
Brian, were you surprised at all that Jared Schuster was starting all of a sudden on
I,
Tuesday?
I, I was, and it immediately caused me to write down my tentative Memphis starting rotation. And I wrote Schuster with a question mark because he's obviously not going to start for St. Louis. But if he's throwing 3 innings in a major league game, they're thinking he's going to be alongside Matthews and Motts and maybe Zimmerman. And I don't know who would be your other Memphis starter? Who's healthy?
Well, I was going to say, I guess it just comes down to Hanson and Eshawn, but they're both still
Eshawn won't be ready for sure.
okay.
So it's either Hanson or maybe Schuster. Maybe Schuster's going to be a fill-in guy.
I know that when they signed Zimmerman, they had kind of alluded to him taking on a starting role at least early in the year.
Yeah.
So I guess Zimmerman and Schuster might, because of some of these injuries, might be the ones who, because they're veterans as opposed to Rajic and Bedell, who get a chance to start the AAA season.
And Sam Roberts is through his first pen, at least as far as I know, it's his first one. So he's working his way back. There'll be other guys that'll find their way into the mix, Jerpy later in the season, hopefully. So we'll have to see.
Yeah.
What else do you want to cover, Kyle? I pretty much cranked through my list here.
Well, Brian, I know that you've been busy, but are there any other, again, just a very generic, what's going on the backfield? Is there anything that stood out to you? I know Liam Doyle, you wrote about it on for the Tuesday publication.
Liam Doyle in the game against the Mets a few days ago gave up a no doubt about it home run in the first inning, and then buckled down and struck out 3 in 2 innings, and then went and threw some more pitches. I guess they decided he didn't have enough pitches left to go a third full inning, but. What I'm seeing in Liam Doyle is he's a competitor. He's going all out with every pitch, even if it's in the bullpen. And that's not a surprise. Interesting guy. You talk about unheralded guys. Chase Heath. Chase Heath was drafted when last year?
20th
round, the last pick in one of those games at the Mets, hit 2 home runs and drove in 3. Now, I didn't go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that Chase hadn't hit 2 home runs as a professional yet. So that was a big day. And you like to see some of the unheralded guys step up and do well.
Yeah, and he had an impressive professional debut in 2025 after being drafted.
And he was our first year player of the year. I called it rookie player of the year, but I have to be careful with that because, of course, there were players that like JJ Weatherholt who didn't play the year before, and last year's our first year. But of all the position players who came in last year, Chase Heath actually had the best offensive performance, as you alluded to.
Yeah, so that's good. I like hearing that. Is there anything else, Brian, specifically going on in the backfields? Was there, I know that, and I'm gonna end up screwing it up. I think did Ryan Mitchell hit a home run, or one of the kids? I know Ty Pete hit a monster home run.
Ryan Mitchell in a sim game. Ryan Mitchell hit a home run that went out, and then he hit another one like a one hopper off the wall. And Ryan Mitchell is getting very, very strong grades for his maturity, for his approach to the plate. He's definitely a hitter. Right now, they're looking to figure out where his home is going to be defensively. But, we're talking about a teenager who would be, a college freshman if he were, had gone that route. So they're going to take some time and figure out what makes sense for Ryan Mitchell. But there's nobody who's questioning his bat.
I know that you're just starting to get your gun out and do some velo readings. Has there been any interesting velo readings going on, or has everything been pretty
Not really, not yet. I'll get more serious about it as we get deeper into minor league camp. But literally, today was just the second games against external competition. After Stanek and Romero were one of your favorites, Ty Van Dyke and Jacob Ogle. So one guy who's a new guy, one guy who's hopefully a bounce back guy.
Yeah. But other than that, Brian, the dirt, the drama, the tea, as the kids say, from the backfields. I think we did a pretty good job of covering a lot of the things worth covering. And probably next week is when I will start. By the time we talk next week is probably when I'll start investing a little bit heavier in the goings on of the in-game action of spring training
Good.
in a very selective way, probably.
And one of the things for members of the Cardinal Nation, I'll provide injury updates on Henderson, Jerpy, and Brian Holiday. I talked with all three of those guys today, and so I'm going to write up a little bit about what they've been up to and how they're progressing in their time back. So make sure you consider subscribing to the Cardinal Nation because pretty much everything we discuss here is covered in more detail. As I said, I'm on the backfields every day. When other guys are covering the big, major leaguers, it's me on the backfield. So if you want to know the details of what's going on, and I'm talking about details like lineups, who's throwing bullpens, who's catching bullpens, a lot of detail on everything that's going on there. And then, of course, our Cardinal Nation Prospect Guide is still for sale, both in PDF form as well as spiral bound hard copy. And folks have seemed to be really enjoying this year's version as it features scouting reports from some guy named Kyle Reis.
Huh. What a dummy. I can disagree. You know what? I disagree with everything he wrote in this beautiful book.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Kyle, but I wasn't going to publish your stuff without editing it. There's only so many times you can say thick.
Yeah, maybe for you, sir, not for me. But no, thank you very much for putting it out. It's beautiful. Again, I cannot tell the audience enough. If you don't have one, and you should already, it is so cool. Minus even getting into the player write-ups and the player histories for the top 52, 53, 55 prospects. All the work that Brian does on the history is so. I mean, I feel Brian. I'm sitting there. We're watching. Ashley and I are watching a show about British hierarchy or monarchy or whatever it is, and I'm flipping through this trying to save myself. So keep that in mind for anybody who might not, like that.
There you go. There you go. So with that, we will close the March 11th edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. And of course, we will be back with you on the 18th, which will be the eve of the spring breakout game. And hopefully at that point in time, we'll know who's going to be starting in that game. And that's definitely a game you want to circle if you care about Cardinals prospects. And let's face it, if you didn't care about Cardinals prospects, you wouldn't be spending 30 or 45 minutes listening to us every week. So do it.
Great point, Brian. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
All right. So we'll close for now and see you next time around. Bye now.